Tom had lived in the old house for most of his life. It belonged to his grandfather, who built it with his own hands. The place was sturdy but outdated, and Tom had always thought of giving it a proper renovation. After years of saving money, he finally decided to begin. His plan was to start with the basement since it had always been damp, dark, and cluttered. On a cool morning, Tom carried his tools downstairs. Dust floated in the air and cobwebs stretched across the beams. He pulled out broken shelves, old furniture, and boxes filled with forgotten belongings. The air felt heavy, but he kept working. For him, this was more than a renovation. It was a way of giving new life to his family home. Hours passed as Tom knocked down a wooden partition. The hammer rang against the old boards, and each strike echoed through the basement. Sweat ran down his face, and his arms grew tired, but he pressed on. When the partition fell, Tom noticed something unusual. Behind the wall was not just stone or soil. Instead, he saw a smooth metallic surface that reflected light in a way no ordinary material should. Curious, he touched it with his hand. It was cold, much colder than the air around him. He knocked on it gently, and the hollow sound that followed surprised him. This was not part of the house. It was something hidden. Tom fetched a crowbar and worked carefully around the strange surface. After minutes of effort, pieces of brick and stone fell away, revealing a hidden chamber that seemed perfectly sealed. His heart pounded as he uncovered more of the metallic surface until a strange oval shape stood in front of him. It was a pod, large enough for a person to fit inside. The surface glowed faintly with lines of blue light, running like veins across its shell. Tom stepped back in disbelief. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if exhaustion was playing tricks on him. But the pod remained, steady and real, humming softly. At first, Tom thought it might be some old experimental machine, something his grandfather hid long ago. But his grandfather had been a simple man, a farmer with little knowledge of machines. This pod looked far too advanced. Tom's hands shook as he leaned closer. Through a transparent layer at the front of the pod, he saw a figure lying inside. The figure was not human. Its skin was pale and faintly silver, with sharp features unlike anything he had ever seen. Its eyes were closed, and its body remained perfectly still. Tom stumbled backward, his mind racing. He had seen strange creatures in movies, but never in real life. This was no story. This was something extraordinary, hidden beneath his very own house. He wondered if he should call the authorities. But fear held him back. If he reported it, strangers would arrive, take the pot away, and he might never learn the truth. For minutes, Tom just stared at the figure. It looked peaceful, as if in deep sleep. He thought of how long it might have been hidden there. Years, centuries? No one in his family had ever mentioned such a thing. Gathering his courage, Tom touched the surface of the pod again. This time it responded. The blue lines glowed brighter, and the faint hum grew stronger. Tom gasped and pulled back, but the pod did not open. Instead, it seemed to be waking, like a machine coming alive after a long slumber. The figure inside shifted slightly, its chest rising and falling as if it had taken a breath. Tom froze in place. This was no lifeless body. The being was alive. He whispered to himself, trying to stay calm. His mind shouted questions. Who was this creature? Why was it here? Was it dangerous? He had no answers, only the growing certainty that his discovery was beyond human understanding. Tom ran upstairs and sat in the kitchen, breathing heavily. His hands trembled as he poured himself a glass of water. The house felt different now, no longer the simple home he had known. Beneath it lay something that could change everything. After a long moment, Tom returned to the basement. He could not leave the pod alone. He set up a lamp to see more clearly. The light revealed new details. Symbols were etched along the side of the pod, glowing faintly in rhythm with the hum. They were not any language Tom had seen before. He noticed that the air around the pod felt warmer now, as if the machine gave off energy. The figure inside no longer looked frozen. Its chest moved with steady breaths, though its eyes remained shut. Tom knelt beside the pod, unsure what to do. He felt both fear and wonder. The logical part of his mind told him to stay away, to cover the chamber again and forget about it. But another part, the part filled with curiosity, refused to turn back. That night, Tom hardly slept. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to faint sounds from the basement below. The hum of the pod echoed through the floorboards, a constant reminder that something extraordinary rested beneath him. By morning, Tom made his choice. He could not ignore it. He brought down food, water, and notebooks. If the being inside woke up, he wanted to be ready. If it never woke, he wanted to record everything he saw. He sat beside the pod, watching. The blue lights pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Tom realized this was no ordinary machine. It was alive in its own way, guarding the sleeper inside. As hours passed, Tom spoke aloud, though he knew the figure could not hear. He told it about the house, about his grandfather, and about how strange it felt to find a secret like this. Speaking eased his nerves, making the silence less heavy. Then, near evening, the pod grew louder. The hum rose to a steady tone, and the lights glowed so brightly that the basement walls reflected their shine. Tom stood quickly, his pulse racing. The transparent layer fogged, then cleared again. The figure inside twitched, its fingers moving ever so slightly. Tom's heart pounded. He realized the pod was not just glowing for no reason. The being inside was beginning to wake. He gripped his tools, unsure if he should be ready to defend himself or to greet a visitor from another world. All he knew was that his basement was no longer ordinary. What he had uncovered was alive, and it was stirring after what might have been centuries of sleep. And Tom was the only human to witness it. The basement no longer felt quiet. The pod vibrated softly, and the glowing lines along its surface brightened with every passing second. Tom stood near the staircase, torn between running away and staying to see what happened. His curiosity held him in place. He knew that if he left now, he might never forgive himself for missing the moment. The figure inside shifted again. Its chest rose in a steady rhythm, and faint mist escaped from the edges of the pod. Tom swallowed hard. He had never believed in stories about visitors from other worlds, yet here one was, breathing beneath his home. Slowly, the transparent cover of the pod slid open with a quiet hiss. Warm air spilled out, carrying a strange metallic scent. Tom raised his hand to shield his eyes from the bright blue glow that filled the basement. When his vision cleared, he saw the figure sit up. The being was tall, taller than any man Tom had met. Its skin shone faintly, almost silver in the light, and its eyes glowed like pale lamps. The alien's movements were slow, as if every action carried the weight of centuries. It turned its head, scanning the room, and then its gaze fixed on Tom. Tom's heart nearly stopped. The alien tilted its head slightly, studying him with a look that was not hostile but filled with curiosity. Tom forced himself to speak, his voice trembling. "Can you understand me?" The alien blinked, then opened its mouth. The words that came out were broken, heavy with an accent unlike anything Tom had heard. "Huh, man?" Tom gasped. The alien knew words from his language. Though simple, the sound of those words carried power. "Yes," Tom said quickly, pointing to himself. "I am human. My name is Tom." The alien placed a hand on its chest. "Ran," it said slowly, as if testing the sound of its own name. Tom repeated the name. "Ron." The alien gave a small nod, confirming that Tom had spoken it correctly. Then Ron tried to stand. His legs shook as if unused for far too long. Tom instinctively stepped forward, unsure if he should help, but Ron managed to steady himself. Ron's eyes swept over the basement. He touched the walls gently, his fingers tracing the bricks as though he was recognizing a place he once knew. Then he turned back to Tom. "How long?" Ron asked. Tom hesitated. "I don't know. I found you yesterday. You were sleeping in the pod. Maybe a long time. Maybe hundreds of years." Ron closed his eyes for a moment as if considering this. His expression carried a weight that Tom could not fully understand. Silence hung in the basement until Tom found the courage to ask, "Why are you here?" Ron's voice was soft, broken but steady enough to follow. "War at many enemies. I Earth, safe. No one find." Tom's eyes widened. "You were hiding? From other aliens?" Ron nodded. "My people hunted. I sleep safe. Until now." The words were not perfect, but the meaning was clear. Ron had been running from enemies and had chosen Earth as his refuge. Tom tried to process this. For years he had lived a simple life, working as a carpenter in town, paying bills and fixing his old house. Now, in a single moment, he had learned that not only did other beings exist, but one had been hidden in his basement for possibly centuries. Tom asked carefully, "Are they still looking for you?" Ron's expression darkened. His glowing eyes met Tom's, and though his words were few, they carried deep meaning. Always, if wake, they know, they come. The thought sent a chill through Tom. If enemies were truly out there, then by waking Ron he might have drawn attention to Earth. He tried not to panic, but his chest felt tight. Ron noticed Tom's fear and raised a hand gently, almost in reassurance. Human strong, different, not same as others. Maybe hope, Tom blinked. Hope for what? Ron did not answer at once. Instead, he lowered himself back onto the edge of the pod, his strength not yet fully returned. His silver skin seemed almost fragile under the lamplight. Tom fetched a chair and sat across from him, keeping a safe distance but refusing to run. He asked, "Do you need food, water?" Ron tilted his head at the words, but when Tom fetched a glass of water and held it out, Ron accepted it carefully. He studied the liquid before taking a slow sip. For a moment, Tom held his breath, unsure if it would harm him, but Ryan nodded softly. Good. Encouraged, Tom offered bread. Ryan chewed slowly, as though he had not tasted food in centuries. As the evening grew late, Tom began to feel a shift in the air. His fear was still there, but it was joined by wonder. Ron was not attacking him or trying to escape. Instead, the alien seemed calm, almost gentle, and willing to speak. Tom leaned forward. If your enemies come, what will happen to us? To humans? Ron's face grew serious. Danger. They take, they use, they destroy. But humans different. You fight, you survive. The words made Tom's heart pound. This alien, who came from a world far more advanced, believed that humans had a strength even enemies feared. It was difficult to believe, yet the sincerity in Ron's voice made it feel true. The basement grew quieter again, but Tom knew this was only the beginning. He had uncovered something that could not remain hidden forever. Somewhere in the vastness of space, others might already know that Ron had awakened. Tom finally stood. You should rest. I'll watch the house. No one will come here tonight. Ron nodded in thanks, though his glowing eyes suggested he knew more than he shared. As Tom climbed the stairs, he felt the weight of a new responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He lay awake again that night, thinking of what Ron had said. War, enemies, hope. Words that could change the meaning of his life. And deep below, in the basement, the alien who had slept for centuries sat awake in the dim light, listening to the sounds of a world that had moved on without him. The house was no longer just Tom's home. It had become the center of a secret, one that might decide the fate of not only one alien but perhaps all of humanity. Morning sunlight touched the old house, but Tom did not feel rested. He had barely slept, his thoughts circling around the strange being who now sat in his basement. The house that once felt like an ordinary place was now heavy with secrets. Tom made coffee, though his hands trembled as he poured it into a cup. He wondered if he was strong enough to face whatever he had uncovered. Downstairs, the faint hum of the pod continued. When Tom entered the basement, he found Ron awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor near the pod. The alien's glowing eyes opened slowly as Tom approached. Morning, Tom said, though he was not sure if Ran understood the word. Ran gave a slight nod, his voice low but steady. Morning. The simple response startled Tom. Each hour, Ron seemed to learn more of his language, as if his mind adjusted quickly. Tom sat on a chair across from him, holding his coffee for comfort. Ron, Tom began carefully. I need to understand. Who are you really? What happened before you came here? For a long moment, Ron did not speak. His glowing eyes seemed distant, filled with memories that reached far beyond human history. Finally, he placed his hand against the metallic surface of the pod. The blue lines glowed brighter at his touch, and faint images shimmered above it like smoke-forming shapes. Tom gasped. The pod was showing visions. First, he saw great ships moving through space, their bodies long and sharp, covered in glowing patterns. Then came figures who looked like Ron, tall and silver-skinned, walking proudly on vast cities that floated above oceans and mountains. My people, Ryan said slowly, his words still broken but clearer than before. We, builders, dreamers, we travel stars. We make peace. Tom stared in awe. He had always thought humanity was still young, barely reaching into space. Yet here was proof that another race had been far ahead, exploring and creating. The images shifted. Now the skies filled with fire, ships clashed in violent battles, cities crumbled, Tom saw dark creatures taller and harsher than Ron's kind. Their armor was jagged, their eyes burning red. Enemies, Ron said, his voice heavy with sorrow. They want control. They want all worlds. We fight. We lose. The vision showed ships falling into oceans, towers collapsing, and light fading. Ron lowered his hand and the images disappeared. His expression was filled with sadness. Tom leaned forward. Your people, they lost. Ron nodded. Many dead. Few survive. We hide. I've chosen to guard this. He pointed to the pod. Knowledge, memory. If I live, maybe. One day return. Tom tried to steady his breathing. This was not just a refugee in his basement. This was a keeper of something far greater. If Ron truly carried knowledge from an advanced civilization, then he was holding a treasure that could change the future of Earth. But why Earth? Tom asked. Why hide here of all places? Ron looked at him, his glowing eyes calm. Humans, small, not known. Safe place. They never look here. Tom almost laughed at the idea. Humanity, with all its wars and troubles, had been seen as too unimportant to notice by galactic powers. Yet that had saved Earth from invasion. Ron touched his chest, his voice quieter now. But I'd not just hide. Wait, my people believe... Maybe one day, humans grow. Different from others. Strong spirit. Not same, Tom frowned. You mean us, humans? But we are still fighting ourselves. We're not as advanced as you. Ron's gaze grew firm. Not about weapons. Not about ships, humans. Adapt, change, survive. Others forget this. That is why. Hope, Tom sat back, stunned by the words. All his life he had thought of humans as ordinary, flawed and small compared to the vastness of the universe. But here was a being from another world saying humanity had something special that even advanced races respected. He asked quietly, Do your enemies know about Earth? Ron hesitated. His eyes darkened. Maybe, I hope not. But isn't if pod wake signal? Go out, they can hear. The thought sent a chill down Tom's spine. If enemies were searching, then Earth might already be on their path. He pictured dark ships descending, just like in the visions. Ron seemed to notice his fear. Not yet. Still time. Must prepare. Must learn. Tom's head spun. He was just one man. He worked with wood, not machines. What could he do to prepare for something so great? But then he looked at Ron again, sitting there weak but determined. Tom realized that Ron had placed trust in him, a simple human. That trust itself meant something. All right, Tom said at last. If you're here, then I'll help you. Whatever I can do. Ron gave a slow nod. His eyes softened as if relief had touched him for the first time in centuries. They spent hours together that day. Ron pointed to objects in the basement, asking for words. Tom taught him simple English, while Ron in turn shared fragments of his own language. The sounds were strange, flowing like music, but Tom tried his best. He felt like a child learning to speak again, and oddly it made him laugh. Ron even smiled faintly, showing he understood the humor. Later, Tom studied the symbols carved into the pod. They seemed to shift under the light, as though alive. Ron explained slowly. Knowledge, history, map, all inside. He tapped the pod gently. Too dangerous for enemies. Must protect. Tom realized that the pod was not just a sleeping chamber. It was a library, maybe even a key to technologies far beyond human reach. As night returned, Tom went upstairs to fetch blankets and more food. When he came back, he noticed something troubling. His old radio, which usually played faint static, now buzzed with strange signals. Lines of sound pulsed sharply, almost like coded messages. Tom frowned and adjusted the dial, but the signal remained. Ron's eyes fixed on the sound. They know, he whispered. Tom froze. Who knows? Ron's voice was firm. Signal. Pod wake. They... Search. Tom felt his knees weaken. The quiet life he once knew was gone. The house was no longer only his. It had become a beacon, a secret calling across space. And if Ron's words were true, someone, something was already listening. Ron placed his hand on Tom's shoulder, his grip strong despite his weakened state. Do not fear. You are not alone now. Tom looked into those glowing eyes and felt both fear and courage rising within him. He did not know what was coming, but he knew the secret buried in his basement was only the beginning of a much larger story. Tom woke early, his mind restless. After learning about Ron's past and the danger surrounding the pod, He could not think about normal life. Every sound in the old house seemed sharper, every shadow longer. The world outside felt suddenly uncertain, as if it could change at any moment. Downstairs, the basement was quiet. Ron sat near the pod, meditating in his own way, his glowing eyes half closed. The alien's presence had grown familiar to Tom over the last days, but the danger it carried was also real. Tom was stacking some wooden boxes to create a barrier around the pod when he heard a sound that made him freeze. The front door had a knock, firm and deliberate. He rushed to the window and peered outside. 2 men stood at the edge of the driveway, wearing dark suits and sunglasses. They smiled politely, but something about them felt wrong. Tom did not know why, but his instinct screamed that they were not ordinary visitors. He opened the door carefully.
"Can I help you?"
he asked. "Good morning," said one of the men smoothly. "We are from the government. There have been reports of unusual activity in this area. We just need to ask a few questions." Tom frowned. "Unusual activity? What do you mean?" The man gave a small shrug. "We cannot discuss details. Please, it will only take a few minutes." Tom hesitated. His mind raced. He knew he could not let them into the basement. Something in him told him these men were connected to Ron's enemies. He needed to protect the pod and the alien inside. "I'm sorry," Tom said firmly. "I cannot let anyone down there right now. It's dangerous." The man's smile did not change, but his eyes hardened. "Sir, refusing to cooperate may be seen as suspicious. You should not make this harder than it has to be." Tom closed the door carefully, his heart racing. He ran upstairs to the basement. "Ron," he whispered, "we have visitors. I don't think they are normal humans." Ron opened his eyes slowly. "They search. They know Pod awake." Tom nodded. "Yes, we need a plan." Ron stood, his movements slow but purposeful. "Hide, Pod, must cover, must protect." Together they moved quickly. Tom brought blankets, tarps, and wooden planks, while Ron guided him to create a barrier that would conceal the pod and obscure its glowing lines. Tom's hands shook as he worked. Every moment he feared the men outside might try to enter the house. The 2 men knocked again. Tom tried to sound calm. "Sorry, they are not here." "Everything is fine," Ron whispered, "not lie." "They know something." Tom realized the truth. These men had sensed the pod's energy. They were looking for it specifically. If they succeeded, Ron could be captured or worse. As the day went on, Tom and Ron worked silently. Ron taught him a few protective techniques, simple but effective ways to defend themselves. Though not trained as a fighter, Tom found himself absorbing every instruction carefully. By afternoon, the men were still outside. They circled the house slowly, occasionally speaking into small devices. Tom and Ron could hear their muffled voices through the walls. "They are patient," Ron said, "but patience does not mean kindness." Wait, plan." Tom swallowed hard. "Then we need to act first. We can't just wait here." Ron's eyes glowed brighter. "Yes, you." "Strong, different, must show them humans, not weak." Tom felt a surge of courage. He realized something important. The alien had survived centuries of war hidden in the pod because beings like him had the will to protect what mattered. Now it seemed he was part of that story too. When evening came, the men decided to approach the door again. Tom prepared himself. He would not panic. He would face this challenge no matter what happened. The doorbell rang, and this time they tried to push the door open. Tom met them in the doorway. "I told you no one is coming in." One man stepped forward, his hand on a small device at his belt. The device emitted a faint hum. Tom's stomach dropped. It was scanning. He could feel the pod's energy resonating through the floor. Ron moved behind him, silent and still, watching. Tom raised his voice. "Leave my house, now!" The man hesitated, and in that moment Tom noticed a weakness. Their devices seemed to falter when the basement lights flickered. Acting on instinct, Tom turned the main switch, cutting off the lights and leaving the house dim. The devices outside beeped and paused. Ron stepped forward. His hands glowed with faint light. Tom had never seen anything like it. The alien pointed toward the men, not attacking, but creating a barrier of energy that shimmered in the darkness. The men stepped back, surprised and confused. Tom felt a new confidence rising in him. "Go, leave!" he shouted. The men, sensing something they did not understand, retreated. Their devices emitted a warning tone, but they did not return that night. Tom and Ryan stood together, catching their breath. The basement was quiet again, but the danger had not gone. They will come back, Ron said softly. Stronger, better prepared, Tom nodded. Then we need to be ready. Whatever comes, we face it together. Ron's eyes glowed with approval. Yes, humans can fight. Different, hope. For the rest of the night, Tom reinforced the basement. He moved furniture, added more layers to cover the pod, and checked every lock. Though exhausted, he felt a new strength. He was no longer just a man renovating a basement. He was a guardian. When dawn arrived, Tom looked at Ryan. The alien's glowing eyes had dimmed with rest, but there was a sense of calm determination about him. Tom realized that the events of the day had changed him. He understood now that courage, even from a human, could make a difference in the larger battles of the universe. As he prepared breakfast, Tom thought about the future. If Ron's enemies returned, they would need more than strength. They would need strategy, teamwork, and trust. And for the first time, he believed that humans could rise to meet challenges that once seemed impossible. The basement, once just a dark, dusty space, had become the center of a secret that might determine the fate of more than one world, and Tom knew deep in his heart that he would not allow it to fall into the wrong hands. The night after the intrusion was long and quiet. Tom sat in the basement beside the pod, thinking about the events of the last days. The world outside continued its normal pace, unaware of the secret resting in his house. Yet the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him. He was no longer just a man. He was a protector. Ron stirred from his light rest, his glowing eyes meeting Tom's. They may return, he said softly. Sooner, stronger, must be ready. Tom nodded. We will face them together. I'm ready. Ron studied him for a moment. Humans, different. You fight, not like others. You adapt. Tom took a deep breath. He realized the truth in those words. Throughout human history, people had survived harsh climates, wars, and hardships. Now, facing an alien threat, he understood that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or weapons, but courage, ingenuity, and determination. Days passed as Tom and Ryan prepared. They reinforced the basement, making sure the pod was hidden from any scanning devices. Tom learned to read the signals that Ron's enemies might send. He observed energy fluctuations and faint sounds, and under Ron's guidance, he created simple defenses using ordinary tools combined with alien technology. Ron's strength grew slowly each day. Though still weaker than his full potential, he began sharing knowledge with Tom, showing him ways to protect themselves and the pod. Tom was a quick learner. Though he had no experience in combat or science, he absorbed Ron's lessons with focus and determination. One evening, a faint rumble shook the ground. The same two men from before returned, but this time they were accompanied by strange machines that hovered above the street, scanning the neighborhood. Tom's heart pounded. He could hear the machine's low hum through the walls. They come, Ron whispered. Prepare. Tom moved quickly. He activated the defenses they had set while Ron prepared himself beside the pod. The basement glowed faintly with alien energy, a protective aura forming around the pod. The machines outside paused at the house's edge, scanning for signs of the hidden alien. Tom felt fear, but it was mixed with determination. He was a human, yes, but humans had never given up when faced with impossible odds. Suddenly, the devices outside began to emit warning tones. Ron's eyes glowed brighter. They see some signal. Must act now. With a deep breath, Tom stepped forward. We can't just hide. We need to show them that humans are not weak. Ron nodded. Yes, you lead. Tom picked up a flashlight and shone it toward the machines outside. At the same time, he triggered the defensive mechanisms they had built, small devices that disrupted scanning waves. The machines wavered, unable to focus on the basement. Ron extended his hands and a soft blue light flowed from him, forming a shield around the pod. The glow reflected off the walls, filling the basement with energy. The men outside stumbled back, their devices faltering under the combined human and alien defenses. Tom shouted, "Leave now, or face what you do not understand." The machines quivered, then retreated. The men glanced at each other, unsure of how to respond. Their confidence was shaken. For the first time, they realized that humans could fight with courage and intelligence. Ron's voice was calm but firm. Not just fight. Survive, humans, stronger than thought. The intruders finally retreated from the street, leaving the house in silence. Tom and Ron stood in the basement, breathing heavily but victorious. Tom looked at Ron. We did it. But they may come again, Ron nodded. Yes, always a threat. But humans, choice, you, decide. Tom considered the weight of those words. He realized that the pod, the alien knowledge, and the battles that followed were not just about survival. They were about humanity's potential. Ron had trusted him, and through him, all humans. The alien's faith in humanity was not misplaced. Days turned into weeks. Tom continued to learn from Ron, and in turn he taught the alien about human ways, how people problem solve, how they endure challenges, and how they protect what they love. Ron observed closely, realizing that humans had qualities that even advanced alien civilizations sometimes overlooked: creativity, adaptability, and courage in the face of fear. One evening, Ron spoke quietly. I cannot stay. Long, my presence? Risk, they may return. Stronger. Tom's heart sank. You mean, you must leave? Ron nodded. Yes, pod repair. Fly again. But gift, knowledge, device. You keep humans ready. Ron reached into the pod and handed Tom a small object, metallic and smooth. It pulsed softly with blue light. Not weapon. Not control. Knowledge. Choice. Humans. Use wisely. Tom held it carefully. He could feel the energy inside. It was not dangerous, but powerful. He understood immediately that this gift could guide humanity, teach them and inspire them to grow beyond what they had imagined. The following night, Ron entered the pod. He sat quietly for a moment, touching the walls and scanning the basement one last time. Tom watched, knowing this was a farewell. Will you return? Tom asked softly. Ron looked at him, his eyes glowing faintly. Maybe. Future humans. Ready, maybe. Together. The pod closed with a soft hiss and the lights dimmed. Tom held his breath as the pod's energy rose, then shot upward, piercing the sky. Within moments, it disappeared from view, leaving only the quiet basement behind. Tom remained standing, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened. The alien had entrusted him with a responsibility beyond human understanding. He realized that humans had a chance to grow, to learn, and to rise among the stars, just as Ron had predicted. Days later, life began to return to normal. The intruders did not come back, but Tom knew it was only a matter of time. He continued to study the device Ron had given him, learning to understand its signals and its power. He also prepared. He reinforced the basement, installed security systems, and trained himself in observation and strategy. Though he was only one man, he now carried the knowledge and courage to face challenges that had once seemed impossible. Tom's friends and neighbors noticed a change in him. He was quieter, more thoughtful, but there was a strength in his eyes. He did not tell anyone about the alien or the pod. Some secrets were too important to share. Yet in his heart he knew that humanity had a choice. They could remain unaware, small and ordinary, or they could grow, learn, and rise to meet challenges that stretched beyond Earth. Ron's trust had shown him that humans were capable of more than they realized. Standing in the basement one evening, Tom looked at the space where the pod had rested. The air seemed lighter, almost alive with possibility. He smiled faintly. The house, once ordinary, was now a symbol of hope. The alien who had slept for centuries had awakened not just for himself, but to show humanity its potential. Tom whispered quietly to the empty room. We are ready. We will be ready. The house remained silent, but the hum of the device Ron had left pulsed softly in his hand. It was a reminder that the adventure was not over. Humanity's story had changed, and Tom understood that he had become part of a future that stretched far beyond his own life. He went upstairs, closing the basement door carefully. Outside, the night sky was clear and stars shone brighter than ever. Tom gazed at them, imagining the possibilities. One day, humans might stand among the stars, not just as observers, but as protectors, explorers, and friends. And it all began with a basement, a pod, and the courage to face the unknown.